what is water? When I look at water, when I think of water, so, well, as a student, I studied it's H2O, there is one oxygen atom and there are two hydrogen atoms. I'm like, this is so huge. I've got such a huge ocean and it's confined in such a small definition. So how does that work? When we think of water, what comes to mind is that my tap is running dry, or if I'm living in a village, then somebody has to go and fetch it, or if I'm staying by the beach, I'd like to go for a swim. There are many dimensions to how we understand water and how we connect with it. I think most of us have forgotten that 60% of us are made of water. That is something that suddenly we are so disconnected from this reality. So you're right, Dr. Hariharan, that when I think of the human condition in the context of what we understand and what we ignore or neglect out of convenience, yes, these are two different dimensions. But look at the idea, or look at the reality, that because we do not allow this other thread to bind with the thread that we choose, to look at water management, to look at water technologies, to look at water distribution systems, to look at monetizing the whole affair, we are really getting disconnected in terms of our consumption patterns, in terms of how we view this as a magical substance. So I personally think water is something which is alien to the planet. I think one of the theories about how did we acquire water, how did water come into us, how did we become on Earth, it is completely an alien affair. It is one of the theories I'm sure everybody knows here is about asteroid landing water on Earth. So yes, so I was asking this question, that when we look at water, what is it? And rightly so, maybe we will come back to this in a bit. But let me already set the agenda for what we're going to be talking about today. Definitely the first question I asked, and why do we need to talk about this today? Why is it such a mainstream subject, ranging from the United Nations to, I think, I don't know, about 20,000 civil society forums that are actioning on water, that are talking about water? Why has it become so important? What are some of the past lessons that we can look at? What is the present scenario? And what is the future of water in all of us? I think this is the agenda that we're going to start with. And of course, the common ground that we all stand on is that we are water and we are stardust. Like I said, that one of the theories suggests that water came to us from collisions, from asteroids landing on the Earth. In fact, even before the Earth was completely formed. So if we look back that history, that is just so beautiful and fascinating. But I come back to this question. There are many ways of understanding it. I'm thinking chemically, I'm thinking historically, I'm thinking culturally, and I'm thinking survival-led. So when we look at these dimensions of understanding water, I'd like a couple of responses and feelings that come to you when you think of this question in these many contexts. What is water really?
So for me, water the most magical question came from Dharamveer Ahluwalia, a physicist, was, did water come first or thirst come first in the universe as the universe began?
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so let's see. What is lifeline of being? Mamta, B.S. Mamta says that. Elixir of life. I love the fact that we're all getting poetic with it and we're still not going about, is it chemically, what does it mean? What does it mean historically? We're all poetic about water. That is possibly even an Indian trait when we think about things and resources, natural resources. So yes, of course, there is a whole legacy of how water has been viewed as something that we deeply revere. We worship water in many different cultures across the world, not just in India. But when we look at water or how we understand or how we view it and how we consume it, how we waste it in the urban context. And why urban? Because we are the largest consumers, definitely. We waste a lot of water. And actually, if you think about it, there's, the Indian government says that in an urban setting, a person requires 135 liters of water per day. Bangalore is asking for about 150 per day, and it's receiving at least half or less than half of it. So what is, and this is just the immediate consumption of water in the urban setting. But if you look at the other patterns of consumption that impact water, that's not even being quantified. The kind of luxury that we consume, the kind of mobility that we require, the kind of household provisions that we indulge in at many different levels for the sake of convenience, for the sake of running these livelihoods. So the impact of consumption in the urban setting has made this a very, very important and a hot topic. And before I really move on to talking about what is it in the urban context that we can consider, think about your own, projects that Dr. Hariharan described so beautifully and wonderfully that everybody's been engaged in. Think about it, that in the urban context, what is the connection with water? So it's only about, I think, 13%, if I'm not mistaken, that 13% piped water is supplied, and that also not for 24 hours in the city structures. So when you look at the provisions, the requirements, the consumption patterns, the way people demand for it in the Delhi context, it's been offered for free, and that's completely created havoc. So when we look at the connection with water in the urban setting, what comes to mind? What are some of the experiences or practices or malpractices rather that's ailing us?
To a miserable neighbor of mine and make him understand what he should be doing on water, while I've spent all my life, thinking life, years at least, on such issues, right? So how do I go to this next door guy and tell him, please don't water your plants or your lawns, in the morning? Why don't you do it at 5 p.m., for example?
Right.
How do I get him to do a multiple set of other things in order to see that he becomes water positive or water neutral in his house, right?
Right.
How do I make him understand that, water takes way too much as coal that is mined in some distant, field or a colliery in Queensland or in Indonesia? It's not even in India today. So I'm saying to you that the biggest frustrating challenge is, how do we get this across to every one of them? Ask Mamta. She lives in an enclave which has probably 300, 400 homes, all of them independent homes. They were plotted developments and they built their homes. She says, she tries to get people to stop using those blessed borewells that they have already plunged. Well, the damage is already done with so many, 400 borewells. She tries putting common sense into those people, and she's shooed away from meetings. They say, go away. Why are you wasting our time? I've had people, that simple thing like, what is it called? An aerator available, and we managed to get them at much less than retail cost, 60, 70% less than retail cost, right? We gave it to some of our members here. I think he's not here. One of the people, he's not here today, I know. And what it is, when he goes to a floor in his apartment, and he lives in an apartment with 700 flats in it, he goes to a floor, knocks the door. The woman very rudely says, you can't come in now. What is this water and aerator? Go away, get out. Right. You can't even talk to me. And he's a flat owner. He's not even a tenant in that place. And he's doing public purpose. He tried for 6 to 8 months, a year and a half ago, thanks to WOW and such things, enthused by us. He gave up. Many of the people here have stopped coming to our meetings because they say, okay, these people are talking, but where is the action? We started 3 years ago, and consistently for the next year and a half, including people from the International Center for Clean Water, saying that we will set for every city a small target of just 1,000 crore liters. Bangalore has 73,000 crore liters. Yeah. Each day, Bangalore spends 250 crore liters. That means 4 days in 365 days. We could not get, we have not, in the first year and a half or so, I think we managed about 800 crore liters. I can't always be saying that it happened because of the WOW Action Forum meetings, but it happened. Somewhere the connect and somebody being stimulated, as with the idea and so on, charged enough to see if he can take it up. So the question, therefore, I think comes back to talking on water. As, for example, Mr. Santana Gopal here, he comes on a Sunday here, and I don't tire of telling of this story. Some of you here are newcomers to this meeting. He comes on one Sunday to Bangalore. He says, I want to meet you. With him, you don't argue too much with Gopalji. So I said, yes. 4 to 6 p.m., we sat together. He is talking of the riverfront development in Hyderabad, which is a very gruesome mess, if you ask me, if they do it the way they're thinking about it. He says, look, can we put together a small team and ensure that we are able to give them a proposal that is sustainable for the longer term? Back to you, Arti. I'm saying that I'm giving you many multiple examples of such things that continue to happen with us. The question, therefore, to us is, and that's the reason I invited you to see if you can give us some simple, very basic formula on how we can galvanize such energies and get to this dense minds of the urban middle class.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that input. And you're right. It is about how do we, pass on the message and move people from where they stand. And I see a couple of responses here as well from Dr. Chakradhar. Leaky faucets, polluting rivers, polluting air to acid rain, washing machines overuse, and the fact that he's tried to live in 2 liters of water per day, which is fantastic.
Yeah, but this is the other illusion that I want to disabuse all of us upon, These are notions we carry. The government loves it when we say citizens have to, stop the dripping tap or see that they put an aerator. We have every 1,000 units or a megawatt hour of energy consumed is 30,000 liters of water that somebody is using in a coal field or in a thermal plant.
Correct.
That the government will do nothing about.
Right.
They will go and get water from 300 kilometers away with 14,000 crores spent on it, right? That they will not want to do anything about. And they will want to catch hold of this poor citizen and some 3 drips of water and tell him that you wasted 10 liters. So I think we should disabuse ourselves of this notion of individual conservation making any difference. Yeah, it can make a difference at the conscience level for you and I. But beyond that, it has no purpose served when it comes to sustainability campaigns that we all have to run in our cities. I want to be emphatic about it, therefore I cut in, Arti.
No problem. And that's actually quite rightly said. When we look at the middle class or the urban middle class, we are conditioned and we are pressed for options, right? So there is only so much that we are able to extend given the confines that we live in, given the financial capacities, given the fact that there are responsibilities that we are fulfilling, both as sometimes an employer, an entrepreneur, and as a family person. So yes, these dynamics play out in terms of how much are we able to stretch ourselves. The question that I'm asking actually is that in the urban context, it's not just to do with, penalizing that one-off figure of, let's say, 10 liters of water wasted, but it is about the how do we view it? How do we connect with it? And I like the fact that you said that, some of the things that I say, you don't know how to land that in reality. What is the practicality of it? I'll give you an example based on what you just shared with us, that there's a neighbor who's been watering his plants at odd hours and you've been asking him to sort of, move from that. And this is something I've been discussing with Dr. Chakradhar also, that most of the roadblocks that we experience in any given system are because of the human or the lack of human intention. Now, my point is that, I have a similar situation. I have an elderly neighbor who lives alone and his servant leaves the tap on and the whole night it is flowing. So there are times when I climb the wall and I take a stick and I turn the tap off because it's in the adjacent garden. But I've also been educating the servants here. It is about, I think, how we view ourselves together as a society. That separation, that feeling of opinion or that feeling of judgment is something that one needs to completely forego to break that barrier and educate somebody on how to move better. And I know this is not easy. India is a crazy country. When Modi was building toilets in this country, we had a team going to Rajasthan and build toilets. And these women, the village women came, with stones and shoes and hit them and said, this is the only time that we can socialize in the morning. You want to take that away from us. So there are many dynamics that play out. But one has to craft the interaction in such a way that your intention of making somebody move from a current practice is also, shifted. How do we do that? It is not about, people are very, very averse to being accused of what they're not paying attention to, what they're neglecting most of the time. The moment we point out that you're neglecting this, it is an offensive position that the other person will take. So this is also part of how we function as humans, not just in the context of water, but in the context of provisions, in the context of resources, the earth that's given to us, the surroundings, and the bioregions that we are a part of.